Horror is like a mirror held up to society, reflecting fears, anxieties, and tolerance for on-screen violence. In the 30s, it was tame. Dracula, Frankenstein, the Mummy, mostly bloodless affairs. By the 80s, society had begun an era of escalating degeneracy. In 82, when society looked in the mirror, it wasn't Frankenstein's monsters, misunderstood and vacant stare that met their gaze. It was a hockey mask, with the also vacant, murderous eyes of Jason Voorhees behind it. And if society glanced down, they might notice the machete in his hand right before it cut off their head, and I'm losing track of the metaphor. Once Voorhees hit the scene, the MPAA and society's self-appointed moral authorities didn't know what hit him. What was happening? Why were audiences paying for the privilege of watching teens die in increasingly creative ways? Because it's fun, Jan.
Why the need for so much gruesome, graphic violence? Why not let us imagine
Because it's so much fun, Jan. Get it?
Friday the 13th was far from the first slasher movie. Halloween came a couple of years earlier. That wasn't the first one either, but it definitely heralded the age of slashers. Halloween creaked open the door, Friday the 13th tackled through it, and paved the way for so many to follow. How'd this movie come to be? It all started with movie producer Sean S. Cunningham. It was 1979, money was tight, and his last big hit was horror. The Last House on the Left, Wes Craven's 1972 directorial debut. So he figured, why not try another scary movie? He already had the perfect title. The title, Friday the 13th, had been rattling around in his head for a while. He just didn't have a story to go with it. That didn't stop him and his collaborator Steve Miner from announcing the movie in Variety with a full-page ad. Friday the 13th, the most terrifying film ever made. And it worked. He was flooded with distribution queries and offers to fund the movies with loans or straight-up investments. They went into pre-production and then just had to come up with a story. That's where Cunningham's friend and writer Victor Miller came in. Let's not talk about the lawsuit between them decades later. Let's instead talk about Miller's recounting of the movie's origins. According to him, Cunningham called him up one day and said, "Halloween is making a lot of money at the box office. Why don't we rip it off?" And back to Cunningham. In a foreword he wrote to Crystal Lake Memories, he talked about how energized they all felt in making the movie. They wanted to put on a crazy magic show. That's what it was all about. Figuring out how to show crazy stuff like cutting off someone's head or putting an arrow through someone's throat, all on a $500,000 budget. And it's all brought together by the perfect campfire tale, the kind of legend campers would tell each other to try and freak each other out. So why don't you have a seat by the fire, grab a marshmallow, they're gluten-free, and listen while I tell you a story. Camp Crystal Lake, 1958, night. The camp counselors sing around the fireplace while the campers sleep at the cabin. And someone watches over them. Like Halloween and Black Christmas, we first meet the killer from his point of view. Unlike those movies, this killer gets his own signature sound effect too. That sound was invented by composer Harry Manfredini, who was inspired by the way Jaws had a score to indicate when the shark was nearby. As for the actual sound, he got that idea while listening to a piece by Krzysztof Penderecki, I tried, whose music is featured in The Exorcist. The chorus contains some striking pronunciations. He wanted to do something similar for Friday the 13th and came up with two sounds, K and Ma, short for kill and mommy. I'll admit I'm one of the people who always thought it was ch and ah, not k and ma, but I'm not the only one. Even the Freddy vs. Jason vs. Ash comic uses my pronunciation. By the way, how awesome is it that the sound is so iconic, it actually gets spelled out in the comic, like Spider-Man's thwip or Wolverine's snicked. While the counselors all sing, a couple of them, Barry and Claudette, give each other the old bedroom eyes and sneak off to a secluded spot to give in to their lust. Disgusting. Thank God a sensible adult is around to slaughter them both. To be honest, the point of view shot apparently doesn't work as well when the characters are aware of the killer, as opposed to Halloween, for instance, where he sneaks up behind his sister. Because when the characters are aware, they try to dodge or fight back, and it makes them look Pretty dumb. The camera can't move that fast, so it makes it feel like they're struggling against a slow predator that should be pretty easy to avoid. The title flies into frame and shatters the camera. Look at the glass fly, because this is no ordinary movie. This is Friday the goddamn 13th. Cut to present day, Friday, June 13th, 1980, or 79, depending on who you ask. I say 80 because June 13th was actually a Friday that year, but I'll revisit the question if I ever do a Friday the 13th timeline, maybe when that Crystal Lake show comes out. Speaking of Crystal Lake, a man named Steve Christie has taken it upon himself to reopen the camp. He inherited it from his parents. Annie's been hired as a counselor and cook, but as she makes her way there, the requisite warning signs. Camp Blood, they're opening that place up again. Then there's Crazy Ralph.
Camp Blood, ain't you?
God damn it, Ralph, get out of here. Leave people alone.
You'll never come back again.
Ralph. I hate that guy. She lucks upon a trucker who offers to drive her halfway. Along the way, he gives her an earful about why she should quit. The place is cursed. A kid drowned in 57. Those 2 kids were murdered in 58. There were fires. They even tried to reopen in 62, but the water was bad. But Annie took the job, and she's going to do it, come hell or high water or machete. A few others arrived before her, including Kevin Bacon. Somebody call Star-Lord. This was early on in Bacon's career. He'd been in Animal House a couple years earlier, but was still waiting tables. His big break wouldn't come until 82 with his role in Diner, followed by Footloose in 84, followed by the Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special in 2022, as featured in entire MCU recapped in chronological order Vertical Bar Marvel Cinematic Universe Timeline Explained. The camp doesn't open for 2 weeks, but Steve is frantic to get everything ready. And he's frantic to keep Alice there. He and the counselor have struck up something of a romance, but she isn't loving it here and has stuff to take care of at home back in California. He gets her to agree to give the place one more chance, just another week. I'm sure everything will go fine. I'm obviously kidding. You know what movie this is, right? Also, pay no attention to the Steve and Alice romance angle. It's pointless and does not come up again. I guess they realized, people just want to see people die. We really don't need to develop these characters. In fact, if we develop them too much and then they die, it'll just bum people out, so it's better this way. The handheld camera is interesting because it means that pretty much all the time, it feels like they're being watched. Sometimes I wasn't sure if I was seeing the killer's POV or not, which is where the score comes in handy, but the doubt works to the movie's benefit, adding to that unease. Steve heads out for some supplies, but where the hell is the cook, Annie? Well, Enos, the truck driver, could only drive her part way, dropping her off at the cemetery, so she hitchhikes the rest of the way, getting picked up by a Jeep. We never see the driver, just their POV. Through their eyes, we watch Annie yammer about her dream. She always wanted to work with children. Hey, wasn't that the turn back there? Annie begs the driver to stop, and when they don't, she's forced to jump out of the car. Hitchhiking in America was on the decline by the mid-70s. Now you know why, Annie. And yeah, the POV shots, I have to be honest. They work well for stalking, but when characters are talking to it, interacting with it, I feel like I'm playing a cheesy virtual reality game. Anyway, Annie is out of the car. Sure, her leg is hurt, but all's well that ends well. Damn it! The POV camera is out of the car and chasing after her. We see the killer's leg, their hand, and their knife just before the blade cuts through Annie's throat. The effect was achieved using a prosthetic taped to her throat, which would split open when she tilted her head back, while copper tubing fed the blood through. Something about the delay, where the flesh rips open and the blood doesn't gush out until a couple seconds later, makes it even more gross, and shocking to see in a movie that I associate with the Halloween era of slashers, a movie with far less blood and virtually no gore. The makeup effects were of course led by Tom Savini, who is legendary in the industry. Just 2 years before this, he did George Romero's Dawn of the Dead, and the kills are the best part of this movie, so Savini is pretty important to the legacy of it. It's awesome that he's still active today. Pretty recently, he designed the mask for Black Phone, and he appeared in a cameo for Terrifier 3, which is also a good example of his influence. Terrifier's director, Damien Leone, got interested in makeup effects thanks to a documentary he saw when he was 6 or 7 about Tom Savini. At camp, the other counselors are goofing off. Another thing I noticed while rewatching the movie, a lot of impressions of classic movie stars. Earlier, there was Humphrey Bogart.
You know, you're beautiful when you're angry, sweetheart.
Now you get Mae West.
Now, if you were a flavor of ice cream, what would it be?
Rock and roll.
What kind of husband does you think I should get?
I should take a single man, leave the husbands alone.
And there are more on the way. Well, there's one more. I guess it's not that many, but I found it interesting. While they play in the water, they're watched from a distance. Brenda thinks she sees someone. No, must be nothing. But what's that sound? Kind of sounds like someone going It would be awesome if the killer was actually making that sound themselves, and they can't figure out why people always know they're coming. Ned fakes drowning to get some mouth-to-mouth. Back inside, Alice spots a snake. The counselors work together as a team to flush it out, and Bill chops it up with a machete. Wow, 2 strikes in a row for scenes that probably wouldn't fly today, especially the snake, which was a real snake killed on camera. The details are unclear. Some say the handler brought in a snake without knowing its intended fate, and he was quite upset. For his part, Tom Savini says he wasn't on set that day, so don't blame him. In any case, this scene cropped up again in recent years on TikTok, where people were outraged by it. Wait, what? There was outrage on TikTok? Oh god, this movie's gonna get me in trouble. Wait a minute, I can actually spin this. These kids are all jerks. They're doing things they shouldn't. And they're getting killed. The movie is a morality tale for the modern era. Nailed it. Nettie is interrupted when he notices a cop has arrived. A cop named Dorf, here looking for Ralph. He gets called back by the chief, but first warns the kids not to be weird.
You kids keep your noses clean, understand? You'll be hearing from me if you don't. We ain't gonna stand for no weirdness out here.
That's the other lesson in this movie. Don't be weird. Be normal. Be like everyone else. Assimilate. In Miller's original script, this motorcycle cop is not present, and Miller was not a fan of the scene being added. He wanted a feeling of isolation, like there aren't any adults around to help, and he thought the cop showing up spoiled that mood. Anyway, where did Ralph get off to? Oh, he's in the pantry.
Messenger of God, you're doomed if you stay here. This place is cursed. Cursed. It's got a death curse.
Ralph was already pretty ridiculous, like a parody of the classic doomsayer trope, but having him hiding in the pantry pushes it to another level. Like, that's what you do in a parody of the slasher genre. Unsurprisingly, this was also not in Miller's script. As they get ready to fry up some burgers, they notice the power is out. The power lines are known to be wonky, so they head out to turn on the emergency generator.
Don't you love that macho talk? Emergency generator.
Are generators considered macho? Because if so, I might be macho, because I turned on a generator once. That's a lie, I've never done that. Damn it, maybe one day. Outside, Ned gets a tad jealous of Kevin Bacon and Marcy and their flirtations. He heads off on his own when he spots a figure in a cabin. He says hello and approaches that figure. As a storm approaches, Marcy tells Bacon about a dream she's had several times, where it's raining and that rain turns into blood. With all that rain, they better head inside. They hop into an empty cabin and start taking off their clothes for some reason, while Alice and the others gather in a separate cabin and start taking off their clothes for some reason, or at least talk about it. They decide to play strip Monopoly, where you pay with clothes instead of money. Must be the beer or grass talking. Tisk, tisk, tisk. Kevin Bacon and Marcy make love while creepy Ned lies on the bunk above them. What a weirdo, and that's his corpse. I feel bad, he's dead. It seems that figure he saw earlier was the killer, and they cut his throat just like they did Annie. Kids, if you hear ma ma ma, don't follow them, don't say hello, just run the other way. You know, it isn't fair, but in retrospect, after years of sequels and other slasher franchises, this movie is pretty generic. Though these days, slashers in general, and even this very franchise, have largely turned toward humor and self-parody, largely out of necessity after so many played-out tropes and cliches. But now it's actually refreshing to go back to this one, which takes itself seriously, except for Dorf and Ralph. And the kids goof around, but in the way kids actually goof around. Sequels will give Jason his signature look. That also gives the movie a cultural touchstone. But in the meantime, we have... which is a nice, weird motif, because you recognize it as score. It clearly sounds separate from in-universe sound, but it's also unmistakably a vocalization, so it gives a sensation of a presence separate from the movie's reality. Something is whispering above everything else. That otherworldly presence clashes uncomfortably with the documentary feel of the handheld camera. Between that uncanny soundscape and the casual presence of a corpse, I can get a little creeped out here. Once Kevin Bacon and Marcy finish what I can only assume is round one of many, this is Kevin Bacon we're talking about, she heads off for a bathroom break. Then round two, only this round isn't Bacon and Marcy, it's Kevin Bacon's throat and an arrow. And guess what? That was right after he lit a grass cigarette. Savini achieved this effect by creating a fake Kevin Bacon body, while the real Bacon is on his knees under the bed, just sticking his head through. So, fake body on the bed connected to his real head, then Savini fed an arrow through the fake neck. It looks remarkably convincing. Now, a lot of people have read themes into the movie, how it's a morality tale. Do any sinning, especially between the sheets, you die. The director, Sean Cunningham, did not intend it that way. In fact, he sees that read as almost diminishing the impact, because slashers should be scary by the way bad things happen to good people. There isn't a logic behind it. At the same time, here's what the writer, Victor Miller, said. That was a lesson I learned from Halloween. If you make love without the benefit of marriage, you get killed. And anyway, what else would a bunch of kids be doing while opening up a camp? Painting canoes? It's interesting how a movie becomes a stew of intentions from all the artists involved, and then you can't predict what'll come out the other side, and what people will make of it. It's like the "is Deckard a replicant?" question from Blade Runner. How do you reconcile a question like that when the actual people who made the movie have differing opinions? Unaware her boyfriend Kevin Bacon is dead, Marcy makes her way to the bathrooms. This is where the campground setting pays off. It forces characters to cross the open dark, exposed between the safety of the cabins and the isolated facilities. When she finally reaches the bathrooms, the camera lingers outside. The light inside turns the window into a glowing capsule, with Marcy seemingly trapped, floating against the stormy night. It creates a mood, foreboding and vulnerable. While she's in a stall, the storm masks the sound of the door opening and the killer stepping inside. With her business complete, she stops at the mirror for a quick Katharine Hepburn impression.
When I looked into that mirror, I knew I'd always be ugly.
We've all done it. She starts to get wise to the fact a stalker is afoot. Is it Jack, I mean Kevin Bacon? Maybe it's Ned. No. But she can say hi to both of them in hell because the killer puts an axe in her face. It does bother me how they keep letting the killer kill them. If she has enough time to do this, she had enough time to at least try and escape. Well, Gil, you don't know how fight or flight works. Sometimes you just freeze up. Hey, I do know what it's like. I've been through this exact thing before. I'm in hell? Damn it! Yes, I died, but I was up against Voorhees and Myers. I'd like to see any one of these kids last even 2 seconds against them. The axe in the face effect, by the way, was done with a rubber axe that had a chunk cut out of it, so when it was glued to Janine Taylor's face, it looked like the blade was in her head. Back at the Strip Monopoly cabin, Alice, Bill, and Brenda are still having a grand old time, until Brenda retires for the evening. She heads out into the rain while Alice and Bill clean up. Where's the boss, by the way? Steve, while half his counselors are getting slaughtered. He's at the diner, but he's ready to venture out into the rain and head back. I'm sure he'll save the day. Tell that to the... While Brenda brushes her teeth in the very facility where Marcy just died, and tell that to his car which breaks down in the middle of the road. Actually, a cop shows up and gives him a lift. Okay, I take it back, maybe it's all gonna work out after all. Except when Brenda returns to her cabin, it's still mama-mying outside. And more than that, she hears a child cry out for help. That's creepy as hell. So far, the scares have been nothing more than the sounds of a stalker nearby, or various slasher kills. But kids are creepy, especially at night in places they don't belong, especially in this movie where it feels out of step with the previous scares. Horror is at its best when it leans on the unknown and unexpected. Did Brenda really hear that child, or was it the wind, her mind playing tricks? Except She hears it again. My God, I don't know if I can keep watching. She gets up and grabs the flashlight. Don't do it, Brenda. Do not open the door. And she's opening the door. She's shouting into the night. The boy cries out again. Over here, please, somebody help me. She follows that sound into the storm until she's staring at floodlights turned on by the killer. Oh, thank God, the lights are on. In horror movies, bad things only happen in the dark, so she should be fine. What the hell just happened? Is that Brenda screaming? The problem is that it cuts away from her right as we hear the scream, but prior to the cut, it doesn't look like she's about to scream, so it feels really awkward, which is too bad because I was getting into that. Let me demonstrate. See? It's awkward. Brenda's death happens at the archery range, by the way, where earlier in the movie, Ned was messing around and shot an arrow right near her, so it all comes full circle. Now Alice is suspicious. She thought she heard a scream. The floodlights turned on at the archery range. What's going on? She and Bill go to investigate. First, they check Brenda's cabin and find it empty. Well, not entirely empty. Don't be alarmed. Probably nothing to worry about. But there is a bloody axe on her bed. Next, they head to Kevin Bacon's cabin. No one to be found. They check the bathroom facility. No one. Maybe they should call someone. Phone lines are down. Maybe they should drive somewhere. Car won't start. Meanwhile, Steve and the cop continue on their drive. The cop tells him how worried Crazy Ralph's wife was when he went missing and turned up at the camp. Crazy Ralph is married? There's hope for us all yet. Wait, who is he married to exactly? Are they even human? Alright, tentatively, there's hope for us, but jury is still out. Unfortunately, the cop gets called to an accident and has to drop Steve off early. He'll have to walk the rest of the way. As he approaches the camp, someone blinds him by shining a light in his eyes. When they lower the light...
Oh, hi. What are you doing out in this mess?
Oh, hi, Mark.
And they stab him. It's funny. Steve is the older, I guess wiser adult, so they keep him out of the movie all this time to ensure it's only the vulnerable teens running around. I feel like they could have saved on budget by just killing him earlier, instead of having to shoot all the diner, car breaking down, cop stuff to justify why he isn't helping. I guess it builds tension because you're like, I hope he gets back in time to save the kids, but is anyone really thinking that? Really? You thought Steve Let's Reopen Camp Crystal Lake Christie was going to save the day? Like Ralph, this also feels like parody. The same way groundskeeper Willie kept dying immediately every time he came to the rescue in that one Treehouse of Horror episode. With Steve dead, the killer shuts off the generator, so Alice and Bill light a couple of lanterns. What to do now? We should probably split up. I'll go see what's wrong with the generator. Why don't you take a nap? She was so worried 10 minutes ago something was wrong. Everyone they know has disappeared. The phones don't work. The car won't start. The generator just shut off. Oh my God, Bill, what do you think is going on? Never mind, I'm tired actually. I think I might just take a nap. I'll see you later. Well, it goes well with the theme of these characters completely giving up the moment they see a blade and just standing there letting the killer kill them. So Alice takes a nap and Bill heads out to the generator. While he checks it out, she wakes up from a nightmare and decides to boil water for some instant coffee. Soon she gets antsy and goes looking for Bill. He isn't at the generator. Where is he? She shuts the door and finds him pinned to the other side of it by arrows. The effects here were done basically the same way Steve Martin did this.
Well, with all the props and everything.
It's just a more intricate version of it with a lot of blood and fake flesh. More of Tom Savini's handiwork. Alice screams and runs back to the cabin. There she barricades the door and arms herself with a bat and a big fork, when suddenly Brenda's body flies through the window, tossed in by the killer. That freaks her out. But then, headlights. She runs outside to the truck and a woman steps out of it. Who is this woman?
Well, I'm Mrs. Voorhees, an old friend of the Christies.
Thank God, someone is here to help. Alice tells her how they're all dead, but Mrs. Voorhees tells her to calm down. It's just this place, the storm, it's got you upset. Here, let me take a look. They walk into the cabin, and sure enough, Voorhees sees Brenda's body. What monster could have done this? Oh God, this place. Steve should never have opened up this place again. There's been too much trouble here. Did you know that a young boy drowned the year before those two others were killed?
The counselors weren't paying any attention. They were making love while that young boy drowned. His name was Jason.
She was working the day it happened, preparing meals. She was the cook. Now she gets aggressive, grabbing Alice and telling her Jason should have been watched. He wasn't a very good swimmer. Suddenly, Mrs. Voorhees hears his voice. She sees young Jason drowning, calling out for his mommy, calling out for her, Mrs. Voorhees. And I'm not sure why I'm building that up like it's a twist. Like you don't already know that Mrs. Voorhees is Jason's mom. But anyway, today is his birthday. In the original screenplay, Miller thought of Jason as a kid who was a little slow and probably just needed more attention than the average camper. But in the actual movie, they took things further and portrayed him as deformed. Ron Kurz, who did uncredited rewrites on this film before officially writing part 2, said that change was his idea, part of those rewrites. Mrs. Voorhees tells Alice that she couldn't let them open this place again, and she gets mean, mistaking Alice for the counselors who let her son die. You let him drown. You never paid any attention. Look what you did to him. And she attacks with a knife. Alice fights her off with a fire poker. See, was that so hard? Alice runs outside. She finds Annie's body in the truck, and she finds Steve's body. Mrs. Voorhees watches the girl run and mimics her son's voice.
Kill her, Mommy. Kill her.
Apparently, she has a split personality where her son drives her to kill in his memory, a sort of reverse Psycho.
Don't let her get away, Mommy. Don't let her live.
I won't, Jason. I won't.
She turns the generator back on, while Alice finds herself a rifle. Unfortunately, the bullets are stuck behind lock and key. Voorhees arrives. And when she doesn't have the knife and she's just kind of slapping Alice, I feel like she'd be really easy to fight off. Like, just push her, or kick her, or tackle her. I can see why the sequels didn't move forward with her as the killer. Finally, Alice gets that bright idea, hitting her with the rifle. Then she leaves and hides while Voorhees follows. It's the classic knock the killer down and don't finish them off so the chase can continue. Hey, you can't blame this movie. Even John Carpenter's Halloween wasn't above it. To be fair, Laurie only made that mistake twice. Why does she keep throwing the knife away? There's a shot of the moon with Voorhees' mouth superimposed over it, whispering, she can't hide. No place to hide. Get her, Mommy. Get her. All while Alice runs. I think it's an attempt to feel a bit surreal and claw back some of the creep factor that's been lost now that we've actually seen the killer. Alice gets to the cabin and hides in the pantry until Voorhees hears Johnny's her way through, swinging a machete, which Alice dodges before hitting her in the face with a pan, knocking her out again. Not to be outdone by Laurie, Alice makes the same mistake again and leaves her there before walking off into the night. She gets to a canoe and sits down next to it, then, oh my God, Voorhees is behind her again. Alice fights her off, picks up her machete, and decapitates her. That is how it's done, Laurie, and it didn't take Alice 7 movies. But also, come on, Voorhees, just like Marcy, if you have time to do this, you have time to take a step back and get out of the way. I love after her head gets cut off too. She's still alive for a split second, so her hands are reaching up to where her head used to be, grabbing at nothing, like her body thought maybe she could catch her head and put it back on. With that, Alice's battle is done, and for some reason she gets on the canoe and paddles out to the middle of the lake. It's not where I'd want to spend the night, but I guess the campground is littered with her friends' bodies, so in her shock, just drifting out onto the lake feels safer. When the sun comes up, she's still out there on the canoe. The police arrive. She wakes up. They call to her, and oh my God, Zombie Jason, the boy who drowned, pops out of the water and pulls her under. She wakes up in the hospital to some good news. Her parents are on the way, and some bad news. She was the only survivor. 2 cops had to pull her out of the lake. They thought she was dead too. And she asks if they found him, the drowned boy, Jason. But they didn't find anyone in the lake. Then he's still there, Alice says. Fade to the lake. Zoom in on the lake. And nothing. Jason popping out of the water definitely works as a jump scare. There was nothing in the movie to indicate the supernatural at play, so once Voorhees' head was chopped off, it was a safe bet the nightmare was over. The cops arrive, so there's a sense of safety. The music is serene. Then, bam, zombie child. Totally unexpected, and it's so grotesque it makes you jump. According to Miller, the movie originally ended with Alice killing Voorhees, and that was it. But Sean called and said we need a chair jumper after the climax. So he wrote this scene, and in Crystal Lake Memories, he says it was as close as he could steal from Carrie without being arrested. Without spoiling that movie too much, it also ends on a similar jump scare. If things were left here, you could read the canoe scene as ambiguous. Was it a dream and Alice just fell into the water? Or did zombie Jason actually pull her in to try and finish his mother's work? Of course, a full-grown Jason in sequels makes the dream interpretation a lot more logical. Then again, the series has taken a few supernatural turns, so who knows? In the end, I think a lot of why this movie was successful had to do with right place, right time. Not by luck, but by recognizing this was the right time to capitalize on the still taboo nature of this kind of violence. It got attention by pushing the envelope the same way Dracula did almost 50 years earlier, except with changing times and tastes. Pushing the envelope looked a lot bloodier in 1980. Of course, it isn't just about showing us the blood and guts, but also by making them look good. Tom Savini is to thank for that. Since 1980, the Voorhees mythos has evolved. He took on his signature look and firmly embedded himself on the Mount Rushmore of horror. Watching it now with a more critical eye than as a child when I first watched it, I definitely noticed a lack of story and character development. The characters are mostly bland archetypes, so not much is asked of the cast. But they do a good enough job to convince you you're watching a bunch of teens, and Savini convinces you you're watching them die. So there is a degree of suspense, enough to have a good time. But to me, honestly, I enjoy this movie more from a cultural standpoint. It feels like participating in a communal experience, like trick-or-treating on Halloween. I enjoy it the same way I enjoyed the Jason Universe maze at Halloween Horror Nights 2025, even if it was a bit repetitive at first, and I still think the name Jason Universe sounds weird, like they're trying to make their own MCU but with slasher villains. Actually, that sounds awesome, to be honest, and great timeline potential. The point is that maze, just like the movie, is less about the story and more about the vibes. Like walking through a haunted house someone built a few decades ago, but here today, it still stands. Month of Terror continues tomorrow with Dead Silence.